the changes that we may have seen play out over the course of the next 5 to 10 years all of a sudden are being played out in a matter of 5 to 10 days. And the difference between law firms that survive this COVID-19 crisis and the law firms that don't, I really believe will be their adaptability to these new conditions.
Welcome to LawNext. This is Bob Ambrogi, and this morning, on the day that I am recording this, which is March 23rd, the practice management company Clio committed $1 million to a disaster relief fund to help the legal community successfully navigate the challenges and hurdles brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. Today on LawNext, I'm joined by Jack Newton, Clio's co-founder and CEO, to talk about this fund and the challenges facing the industry. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment. But first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, on to this week's interview. Jack, welcome to LawNext.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Well, first off, how are you and your family doing?
We're lucky, Bob. We're all healthy and quarantined, or not quarantined quite, but self-isolating and social distancing ourselves from the community at home. Clio's been mandatory work from home for over a week now. So our 500 plus worldwide staff are all working from home, and our 5 worldwide offices are shut down. And that transition has been, I think, surprisingly smooth, and it really feels like we haven't missed a beat from a customer service perspective or from an application availability perspective. So all things considered, considering ourselves very lucky right now from a business continuity standpoint and from a family health standpoint.
You've kind of got two families there. You've got your family at your home there in near Vancouver, and your big Clio family. And I'm glad to hear they're both doing well. How long can you continue to operate like that?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think the answer is really indefinitely. There's nothing that will prevent us from working successfully as a company in a fully distributed fashion. And you know, when I sent the company home a week and a half ago, my message was, this is going to be for at least 2 weeks, and it might be for much longer. So prepare yourselves for that. But let's also look at this as a huge opportunity, and an opportunity to build some new muscles and find new ways to work together. And the statement I made to the company then that I believe I'm even more convinced is true now, is that this experiment, if you want to call it that, of all of Clio being fully distributed and fully work from home, is going to have a permanent impact on our culture and the way we work. And I think that's true of the economy as a whole, where every industry is finding new ways to work right now that I think will transcend this COVID-19 crisis. And it's really interesting to think about the permanent and lasting impacts this sudden change in the way we work is going to impact things. And I think what's become clear just in the week and a half since I send everyone home is that this isn't going to be 2 or 3 weeks of work from home. I think we're preparing for this being at least 2 or 3 months of work from home. And depending on how things play out with the disease propagation and solutions like a vaccine and testing kit availability, we could be working this way for a year or more. And I don't see us being unable to work in any way through that potentially year-long plus period.
And yet, as you say, the change has come suddenly and it's come quickly. Things that we were, you and I actually talked a couple of days ago as you were briefing me on the news that you're going to be announcing today, but you were making the point then that changes that we thought we might be seeing over the course of years have suddenly been compressed into days.
That's right. And I think, for me, it's been one of the more effective ways of framing the change we're facing as really the changes we probably would have seen in the legal industry and more broadly, of course, but speaking about the legal industry in particular, the changes that we may have seen play out over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, all of a sudden are being played out in a matter of 5 to 10 days. And the difference between law firms that survive this COVID-19 crisis and the law firms that don't, I really believe will be their adaptability to these new conditions. And to quote Darwin when he talks about the survival of a species, it's not the size or strength of the species that dominates. It's the adaptability that ends up being the evolutionary advantage. And I think that's what's being tested right now is really the adaptability of individuals and law firms and businesses of all types to these new conditions. And as with every major downturn and every crisis we've had over the last few decades, there will be winners and losers that emerge from this in every industry. And what we're trying to do with this fund is to best help the firms that want to win to navigate this unprecedented landscape of change we're faced with, and to do as good a job as they can of compressing what might have been 5 or 10 years of evolution into something that's literally done over the course of 5 or 10 days.
Well, I want to talk more about the fund, but let me just follow up on that. I mean, do you think this is in fact a matter of life or death for some firms? Do you think there will be firms that will not be able to survive this crisis?
Oh, without question. I'd be surprised if there's not already firms that have shuttered their doors permanently in the face of COVID-19. When you look at the data and you look at the data and understand the fact that most law firms are solos. 50% of all law firms in the United States are solo law firms. When you look at the fact that 80% of all law firms are firms of 10 lawyers or less, these are small businesses, and like most small businesses in the U.S., they're maybe a month or two, or maybe a few months away from having cash reserves that run out. And unless there's major economic stimulus packages that help avert this disaster, there's going to all the expenses of running a business, all the expenses, including employee salaries, your lease and overhead expenses. All of those are due at the end of this month. All of them are due at the end of next month, and so on. And there's going to be some law firms that because of the new circumstances they're faced with, just will not be able to navigate this crisis. And if you're not adapting to this change really rapidly, I do believe that this COVID-19 crisis is posing an existential threat to many law firms, especially the SMB, the small to medium sized business law firms that just don't have the cash reserves that a large law firm might have, for example.
So, Jack, today your company announced that it's committing $1 million to this disaster relief fund to help the legal community get through this pandemic, this crisis. Why did you do that?
So we looked at it as an opportunity to provide leadership when leadership through these uncharted waters was sorely needed. And pretty quickly, last week, once we'd made the pivot to working from home and successfully embracing this new world at Clio, our minds pretty quickly went to our customers and started thinking about how do we help our customers navigate this challenge? Because we appreciated there's a few really big things at work here. There's number one, the need to move to the cloud. It's really clear, as we've seen in past disasters like Katrina, for example, where on-premise systems and the nature of those systems ended up being one of the things that most severely limited law firms' success and one of the things that posed the biggest threat to successful business continuity for law firms. So the way I when I looked out at the landscape of the legal in general, both our existing customers and non-customers alike, it's really clear that a mass migration to the cloud away from on-premise systems was necessary to facilitate this distributed and work from home environment. And secondly, there was a lot of education that had to happen in terms of how do you run a distributed law firm? How do you work with both coworkers at the law firm that are going to be remote and distributed? And how do you interact and work with your clients when you're likewise remote from them and distributed from them? And I've been banging the drum about moving law firms to be cloud-based, or to use cloud-based technology, at least even at on-premise law firms for over a decade now. But what's really interesting is, although I believed that in the long term we would see an eventual move away from bricks and mortar law offices to distributed work environments, lawyers working in co-working spaces, where lawyers working from home, lawyers working in smaller, more modest offices, for example, and in a situation to deliver their legal services successfully over the internet. That world has arrived a lot earlier than I expected it would, and helping law firms navigate that piece of the change, which is, how do I not only embrace the cloud from a technology perspective, but how do I work with my paralegals? How do I work with my fellow partners? How do I work with my clients in this completely new world is something I feel like Clio is exceptionally well positioned to deliver guidance and leadership on, because we've been doing it for over a decade. Even in Clio's very early days back in 2007, 2008, when Ryan and I were building Clio, we were actually building Clio in a distributed work environment where I was working out of Edmonton, Alberta, and Ryan was working out of Vancouver, BC. And our first handful of employees, even back then, were distributed across both BC and Alberta. And as we've grown up, obviously we've established these centers of gravity where we've got full-blown offices and clusters of dozens or hundreds of staff working out of those offices. But there's still a lot of distributed workers at Clio, and we feel like we've got a very proven model for how you accommodate distributed work. And that's something we're able to share out to the industry. So really this fund and the expertise and the materials we want to be providing, both through Clio as well as our partners and collaborators that are locking arms with us on this effort, is a comprehensive set of resources and materials and financial aid to help law firms make this leap from on-prem and from bricks and mortar law offices to cloud-based law firms that are distributed work from home environments that can just as ably, if not in a superior way, deliver the legal services that they were delivering to their clients previously.
Yeah, so I mean, as you suggest, it's really a kind of a double whammy for a lot of firms. It's firms that maybe were thinking about moving to the cloud, but we're thinking about moving to the cloud from within the bricks and mortar environment that they're used to operating in.
Exactly.
Now suddenly it's both having to move to the cloud overnight, literally, and into a distributed environment at the same time.
Exactly.
So let's just get into some specifics here in terms of what this fund will do, how it will be deployed to the legal community. And I know that one of the big things that you are talking about here and offering, or going to be putting this money towards, is educational support for the legal community. So talk a little bit about that. How are you going to how are you going to use that money to educate the legal community?
Yeah, so you mentioned the educational piece, and I'll start there. And really what we're doing is pulling together a group of thought leaders and a group of subject matter experts on distributed work, working from home, working with clients remotely, and experts in the broad spectrum of technologies that we believe will form the backbone of the modern law firm, and I believe the kind of firm that will be thriving not just during this COVID-19 crisis, but beyond. And I think the reality here is the future just arrived early, and we need to get everyone there as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of education that needs to go into that. So we're going to be enlisting those folks to help us in creating webinars. Just to give you a sense of the demand for this, last week we hosted a webinar on remote work and how to work from home. And in the space of 2 days since we launched the webinar to actually holding it, or announcing the webinar to actually holding it, we saw over 1,000 people register and attend that webinar. So creating more of those webinars around, it was just an incredible response. And creating a whole series of webinars around that, creating more in-depth content, ebooks, and other written materials that people can consume and understand how to navigate this change. Enlisting experts to help us teach, both through panels as well as these webinars, what the future of legal looks like and how to get there quickly in a really pragmatic way. We're also going to be... Is this all
being produced directly by you, or working with bars or others as well?
We're all the above. So we'll be producing a bunch of this ourselves. We're going to be enlisting folks that are outside of Clio to help produce this content as well. So it's a very broad-based effort, and you're going to see more announcements about the specifics of that in the coming days. And this content will be all produced under the Clio umbrella and published through our channels, but we're also partnering with a wide variety of bar associations, everywhere from the national to state to city level and county level bar associations, to syndicate and push out this content to their members. We're partners with over 66 bar associations in the United States, and able to collaborate with them both in getting this content out there, as well as hosting state level specific information seminars where we're able to target the content more at the specific needs of that specific state or even that specific city. So that's one arm of the investment we're making to help the legal industry navigate this change. And I should point out as well, although we're obviously taking a Clio-centric approach to this, in the sense that we've got a horse in this race when it comes to the technology. All the education we're going to be doing and the broader frame we're going to be providing is around the fundamental toolkit that we believe law firms need to navigate this new world. So that'll include, Clio as maybe the hub of those tools, but we see a lot of tools that all of a sudden are a fundamental aspect of the toolkit for every law firm. And that includes tools like Zoom for video conferencing and having face-to-face meetings with your coworkers as well as your clients. We think that something like DocuSign and e-signature solution is a fundamental component of that law office technology stack. Microsoft Office 365, along with Microsoft Teams for the real-time collaboration environment, is an important piece of that. And finally, electronic payments, whether it's through LawPay or Clio Payments, which is powered by LawPay. We need to realize that we're, again, all of a sudden overnight in a world where asking your clients for physical checks and trying to collect checks that maybe arrived at your office that's on lockdown is no longer tenable. And all of a sudden we're in a world where electronic payments is going to reign supreme. So we're educating law firms on all of those those issues.
Have you been in touch with any of those companies about coordinating, kind of offering a toolkit through them or in collaboration with them?
We have. The good news is we've actually got integrations with all of the companies I just listed off there. So they're existing integration partners and existing partners on the Clio platform, and we are actively working with them to create some kind of bundled pricing or larger offering we might be able to offer our membership. So that's currently in flight. So that's the educational support pillar of this fund that we'll be investing a large amount of resources into. The second piece that's tightly related to the educational support piece is support with onboarding and implementation of moving to the cloud. So we're going to be hosting, starting today, we've got our first cohort of folks working through this program is what we're calling a quick start program. So in the course of 5 days, you'll be able to onboard, every single day we'll be offering a new cohort of people that are able to join this class, but we're going to offer an onboarding program to learn the cloud, learn how you can run your law firm in the cloud. You're going to learn a very digestible chunk every day over the course of 5 days. The sessions will be about half an hour to 45 minutes long. And at the end of those 5 days, you'll have an understanding of how to use that essential toolkit, that Clio, Zoom, DocuSign, Office 365, and Teams ecosystem, all wrapped in one. We're also providing direct financial assistance to law firms that need support to offset the cost of Clio or other tools that they might need to support their law firm in a cloud-based environment. So we know that many law firms are going to be in a situation where their finances are tight over the coming months, and they know that moving to the cloud is required, just to survive, but they may not have the financial resources to do that until they're able to kind of get on their feet again and successfully transition to the cloud and start doing things like capturing electronic payments from their clients and so on. So this fund will also be deployed against those kinds of needs to support funding of both Clio and other cloud-based tools to help these law firms successfully navigate the coming months.
And finally, we're offering new firms. Well, go ahead, finish up. Is that focused on new firms new to Clio who are coming aboard onto Clio, or is there a benefit there for firms that are already customers of Clio?
It's open to both. Actually, my comment there did skew toward new customers, but it applies to existing customers as well. If you're an existing customer of Clio and COVID-19 is causing financial hardship for you, and you need a break on your subscription fee, or maybe even need your subscription fee waived for a few months while you navigate this change, this is exactly what this fund is intended for: is to provide relief where we can. And then the final pillar of this initiative, the $1 million funding initiative, is around financial aid for legal organizations. So we'll be providing direct funding to legal clinics that maybe are busier than usual or need to expand their offerings or need to, again, adapt to this new cloud-based and distributed work environment rapidly to continue providing, access to justice from their perspective, as well as mental health charities. So I think one clear impact of COVID-19 above and beyond, the devastating economic impacts is the severe mental health toll that it's exacting on everyone. But I think lawyers as a profession, and these stats as well as I do, Bob, but are I think a particularly vulnerable and susceptible group that already struggle with mental health and substance abuse and so on. And we think that the COVID-19 pandemic is only going to create additional stresses, and we want to be able to fund and support as many of the mental health oriented charities as possible through this fund.
So how does a firm or an organization that wants to take advantage of this go about doing that, and how will you be deciding how to deploy those funds to specific firms and organizations?
Yeah, great question. So, in the to your first question on how do you apply and how do you engage with us, you can go to clio.com/COVID-relief. And that is the hub for all of our resources relating to how to navigate the challenges that COVID-19 presents, as well as how to apply for the fund. And in terms of assessing applications for the fund, we in the first handful of hours since we publicly announced the fund, we've seen hundreds of applications for the fund. So the demand is certainly out there, and we're going to be assessing each one of those requests at on a case by case basis, and evaluating what the specific needs are and doing our best to calibrate our response to each specific request. And every request does have its own particular circumstances. We have a whole team of people at Clio dedicated to servicing the requests we receive and helping prioritize them and helping allocate the funds as judiciously as we can.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, let's continue this week's interview. What have you been hearing from your customers? I mean, you talked about your own staff and your own family, but I guess part of your family is your customers. And I mean, are you getting any feedback about how they're dealing with this? I mean, other than financial? Well, financially is of course a critical part of it, but have you been getting any feedback from your customers about how they're all dealing with this situation?
Yeah, I think that people are stressed. People are facing a lot of uncertainty, and it's interesting because I think legal as a whole is outside of the direct blast radius of what we've seen the impacts of the COVID-19 disaster to be so far. It's really clear there's some businesses like restaurants, for example, that are very clearly in the direct blast radius for this. And law firms are somewhere outside of that. And I think if you're a lawyer looking at the headlines right now and you see almost every aspect of the economy grinding to a halt, and you just realize that lawyers are often, cogs in that economy in different places. There's companies aren't doing acquisitions, companies aren't getting funded, people aren't outside driving their cars and getting in accidents. All the things that, even, I'm sure there will be some post-apocalyptic spike in divorce rates, but just like we see after the holidays, there's a bit of a bump in divorce rates. We're probably going to see a lot of marriages not successfully navigate this this challenge, but there's probably a lot of couples that are just facing the realities of, well, we're not going to be able to get separated while this whole thing is happening, so let's punt on our divorce. If you just look at almost every practice area and every aspect of the economy that's been slowly, or maybe all of a sudden even grinding to a halt over the course of the last 2 weeks, lawyers, I think, realize that this is going to have some profound impacts on them. So I think there's anxiety and fear, as there is, I think, with almost every sector of the economy, and we're seeing that in the conversations we've had. I reached out to the community as a whole about a week ago and just asked, what are you seeing, and what are you fearful of, and more importantly, how can Clio help? And I was inundated with responses, many of which came through direct messages and email. And I think what want is leadership, and they want to feel like they've got a community that they're working with to help them navigate this challenge. And that's part of what we're trying to provide here as well is community. And I think everyone wants to feel like they're in this with someone else. And I think social distancing and everything else that we're seeing happen right now has people feeling more isolated than ever. So this need for community and this feeling like, we're all in a ship together, and we're gonna be able to navigate this more successfully as a group than we will as individuals is something I heard really clearly. And that was part of the inspiration for this fund, and the overall approach we're taking is, look, there's a real need for leadership. There's a real need for somebody to emerge with a clarity of vision of, hey, this arrived a lot sooner than we expected, but the future is here. Let's navigate there. And I think if we look at a bright side to all of this, I think people are also excited in a way to actually move fast and turn on a dime to adapt to this new reality. And I think, turning on a dime is not a turn of phrase that you use very often when you're describing the legal industry. But if you just look at the externalities that are at work here, it's either turn on a dime or die. And a lot of firms, I think, are excited about the opportunity this presents. And I think what they're becoming increasingly tuned into is the fact that many of the changes that we're making over the course of the coming days and weeks to adapt to this new reality are actually going to pay dividends for us well beyond the immediate crisis at hand. And when we eventually exit this COVID-19 crisis, I think there's what I'm optimistic about is that this will be a catalyst for enduring change, and we'll see changes in law practices, in the way that lawyers embrace technology, and frankly, we haven't talked about it much, but even the courts that for years I think have been some of the most technology resistant and rigid organizations in the legal system. I think Richard Susskind once again is going to look very prescient with his most recent book about online courts, but that's going to be a transition that this COVID-19 crisis may actually help catalyze, and judges and other stakeholders in the court system may realize maybe we can actually render a fair judgment over a Zoom call or a telephone call. Maybe we don't need the traditional machinery of a courthouse to deliver justice. And I'm optimistic that some of these evolutionary steps in how the legal system works might never have occurred, never mind 5 or 10 years in the future. Some of this may have lasted indefinitely if it wasn't for this forcing factor that is the COVID-19 disaster. So if there's a silver lining in any of this, that's what I'm hoping we'll be able to realize as the enduring change.
Well, in terms of that change that might be coming, Clio has effectively been taking the pulse of the legal profession for the last few years through its legal trends report, in which you've been collecting data on the practice of law, on consumer conceptions about law practice. Do you see a role going forward for the legal trends report that can perhaps give us some insight into how we respond to this crisis and how we adapt to this crisis?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was speaking with a team last week saying let's put the plan for everything we wanted in this year's legal trends report into the shredder. I think this year's report will certainly be focused on the impacts of COVID-19 and how lawyers, what the learnings from that might be for lawyers. I think importantly, and this is something we'll be working on over the coming weeks as well, is the anonymized and aggregated data that forms the backbone of the legal trends report is something that we can adapt into more of a real-time reporting tool that we can monitor to understand, in real time, how is the legal industry being impacted by COVID-19. And We can see that data on a state level as well as a city level to understand, for example, how has billing volume across our hundreds of thousands of customers in the U.S. dropped or increased over the course of the COVID-19 crisis. And we can liaise with state bar associations as well as city bar associations to better understand what are the economic impacts and realities being faced by their membership as a whole. And this, I think, is a unique advantage that we have heading into this crisis that we didn't have in the past, where you often could only understand the economic impacts with the benefit of hindsight and looking at what the economics impacts were based on, tax returns or other far lagging indicators of how the industry is going or doing rather. And we've got a much more granular and much more real-time view into how the industry is doing. So something to look forward to over the coming weeks, and we're still working out the exact details of what this will look like, is some form of a live legal trends report that we'll be able to share out and collaborate with the industry on, in terms of this real-time view of some of the important health metrics for the legal industry as a whole.
I think that'll really be fascinating. Another area where you may be already kind of throwing out your blueprint is in your own product development. I mean, I realize we're early into this, but are you rethinking at all what your priority or roadmap will be over the coming months in terms of your own internal product development?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was the other item that went into the shredder last week was the product roadmap for 2020. And I think again, what's so interesting to think about the impact that this crisis has had, especially when you take the view that as I do, that this will likely last months, not weeks, is the fact that everything we believed about our average customer changed overnight. And our average customer a week or two ago was, a bricks and mortar law office that had embraced cloud-based technologies, but still ran its law firm like a typical bricks and mortar law firm, with a benefit of some cloud-based technology to eliminate some IT headaches and gain all the benefits of the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. And overnight, our average customer is a distributed law firm that has no physical bricks and mortar law office and is working from a network of the firm's employees' houses. And the demands that creates of Clio to be a better collaboration tool for Clio to facilitate this distributed work environment, I think, is something that Clio is good at, but the demands of this new world, I think, means that we need to think about what is evolving Clio in a direction that Clio is great at that, because that's something all of our customers will need. I think deepening and strengthening the integrations with this backbone of products that I listed earlier, the Zoom, the DocuSign, the Office 365 and Teams integrations. These are all products we integrate with at a level right now, but I think really deepening those integrations is something that our team is evaluating right now. And finally, I think the client piece of the equation, as you know, we've got tools like Clio Connect right now that do enable you to collaborate with your clients remotely. But I think the question we're facing now is what does the next level of that look like? How do we translate a world where you're dealing with your clients primarily through the internet rather than as almost an augmented form of communication? It's the only form of communication with your clients. how do we transform that experience and take it to the next level? So those are our three, thematic pillars without, going into too much detail, not to be coy, but because we're still working out what the detail is.
Yeah,
but
we're all
those
figuring it
are
out.
the thematic pillars that we're approaching the 2020 product roadmap with fresh eyes.
Right, we're all figuring it out. I mean, Clio is lucky to be in the privileged position financially to be able to do this extremely generous, create this
Absolutely.
extremely generous fund. What about other legal tech companies out there that want to do their part? I mean, I know you often give advice to a lot of legal tech founders, startup founders. Any suggestions or thoughts on how the rest of the legal tech community can contribute in some way to making life easier for the legal profession at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a legal tech community, it's our chance to step up and really provide leadership and provide guidance at a time where we're needed more than ever. And I think, further to some of the comments I made at the outset of this podcast, all of a sudden legal tech has moved from maybe a nice to have for a lot of law firms that help them create a bit of a competitive edge or a better client experience, or slightly, or improved productivity, whatever the narrative might be. All of a sudden, legal tech is essential and is going to be the tools that law firms lean on to survive. So I think looking at how do you help both your existing customers and your future customers navigate to that future that we all believe is possible as effortlessly as possible. So I think that can be, I think what's often the easiest thing for firms to do is offer some kind of in-kind support. So if that's discounted or free access to your software, let's reduce the pricing barriers over this time as much as we can. Let's provide thought leadership and be really clear on how your product or service can be deployed into this next generation law firm that can successfully navigate the COVID-19 crisis. And let's work together to create community. And again, I think that's one of the really strong data points that came through for me from that question I asked the community more broadly, is there is a need for everyone to be more closely connected than they've been in the past. And find ways to create that community, both within your existing customer base, but more broadly in the legal tech community. I think we need to work more closely together than we ever have. And those would be my main bits of advice for anyone else in the legal tech sphere that might be listening.
Well, I guess this is my kind of last question to you, Jack. I think you've made your thoughts kind of clear on this over the course of this conversation, but we all hope that we're gonna come out of this at some point, and we're gonna get back in some way to normal life. Do you think that this is going to change the legal profession permanently? I mean, its use of technology permanently, or do you think that law firms will kind of fall back into a complacency or old way of doing things again after all of this changes? I mean, is this change permanent, or are we just seeing something temporary right now?
Yeah, I really believe that we're going to see a new normal emerge for the way that law firms work and the way that many businesses work. I don't think there is returning to normal, and especially if we think about this stretching out, for a period of months, we're going to build brand new muscles that didn't exist, just 2 weeks ago. And we're going to find that those muscles give us superpowers. We're going to understand that allowing employees to work from home, for example, can actually make them more productive. We're going to realize that maybe what used to be a 1 hour in-person meeting could could just be an email. We're going to realize we could accomplish a lot more over a video chat as opposed to a face-to-face meeting. By the way, we're probably also going to realize a bunch of things that we assumed that were incorrect. Like maybe our clients tell us that, I actually prefer a Zoom meeting over driving to your office to to have a face-to-face meeting. We'll probably hear that I prefer you sending me over that DocuSign versus driving into your office to put a wet signature on a document. We're going to see, I think we're going to learn so much over the next few months or longer. And those learnings are going to be transformative to the way we do business. So I think there's going to be some, if we think about a pendulum swing, I think that we're going to go from a world that was pervasively on-premise and bricks and mortar to the opposite end of the pendulum swing, where we're all cloud and fully distributed. And I think what we'll see, the new normal will be somewhere in between those two extremes. I think there's still a role for the bricks and mortar law office. I still think we'll see bricks and mortar law offices on the other side of this crisis. But I think what we'll see is a much stronger hybrid model, where maybe there's smaller bricks and mortar law offices supported by a larger distributed staff. And, to the classic quote that the future is already here, it just isn't evenly distributed yet. I think we've seen many innovative firms embracing these innovative models and these hybrid models over the course of the last few years. And the difference, I think, will just be that every law firm that survives the COVID-19 crisis and gets on the other side of this is going to have some permanent foundational changes made to the way it runs its law firm, thanks to the learnings it's had over the course of this crisis.
Well, out of this crisis, we will all build superpowers. I like that thought. And on that note, Jack, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak with me today. And thanks to everybody at Clio for everything you're doing to help the legal community through this time.
Well, it's our honor and privilege, and thanks for having me on the show, Bob. Really appreciate it.
Well, you've been listening to Jack Newton, the CEO and co-founder of Clio, talking about their $1 million fund to help the legal community successfully get through the challenges we're all facing right now as a result of this coronavirus pandemic. Thanks to Jack again for being on the show. Thanks to my producer, Ben Ambrogi, for making the show come together. And thanks for listening. This is Bob Ambrogi.